What is going on, everybody? And I hope you all have a very, very, very great Friday. And today we're going to be talking about who should be the next DCU Batman, or at least who I think should be. Um, I don't know if most of y'all are going to like my answer, but I'm going to give my opinion anyway because I feel like a lot of people are getting a little bit carried away with not even just the casting of Batman, but just like casting superheroes in general. Like, everybody thinks that they got their casting and it's the best casting of whatsoever, you know what I mean? And it's kind of making an impact on Hollywood because, these very same people are going on the internet. They have a little bit of attraction on the internet saying, "Hey, make this guy." That's part of the reason why we have things like well, who is it? What's his name? John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, and I wouldn't even say Pedro Pascal as I wouldn't say Pedro Pascal. I don't think nobody casted him, but like it's things of that nature. And I'm not gonna say Superman too, but at the same time, when it comes to James Gunn, it's very eerie to think that the internet, or at least DC on the internet, the community, everybody was pretty much saying David Cornsweat or the other guy, which was Wolfgang Novigrad, something like that. I don't know. Uh, but before the actual news on the Superman movie kept coming out and out and out, and then confirmations being made, a lot of people were campaigning for David Cornsweat to be Superman. But we're not here to talk about them. We're here to talk about Batman, and I'm gonna get right into it. So, if you don't know, DC has hit the reboot button on the movies. They've completely wiped everything clean besides Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker. um, and that's because of the simple fact that those two movies don't really correlate with the DCEU as a whole. Um, you have one, two, maybe three to five characters that interacted with other characters from the DCEU, like, very notable and big stand up characters like Amanda Waller with Ben Affleck's Batman, and even Superman to a degree. Um, you know, there really wasn't no other than that, there wasn't no real connections or ties to the DCEU. You know what I mean? So, with the exception of those two properties, the DC movies and shows, I wouldn't even say shows because DCEU, there was no shows connected to that. But you get my point. Wipes wipe clean, totally. It's done. So now we started anew with something else, which is called DCU, just DC Universe. Now, this is going to start kick off with essentially Superman, Batman, Brave and the Bold, which features Batman and Robin. And when we mean Robin, we mean Damian Wayne Robin. So there's that. Then there's going to be Paradise Lost, which is essentially a TV show based in Themyscira, all about the Amazonians. Whether if Diana will be a star, the star of the show, that remains to be seen. We're getting Swamp Thing. We've got Creature Commandos already, which is an animated series James Gunn was working on. The Authority, we're still waiting on news for that. We're getting Booster Gold and Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and off the top of my head, and Clayface as well. We're getting Clayface. Okay, so slate is totally wiped clean. Now, if you ask me who should be cast as Batman, I think the people in charge of casting, whether it be James Gunn or not, should they shouldn't just look for a star. They should look for somebody who truly embodies the character of not only Batman but Bruce Wayne. As I said in my last video about my favorite live action Batman, what really matters about the actor, getting it down is essentially how he portrays the character. He's got to be able to be mysterious, but also at the same time, when he's not this one character, he's got to be somebody who knows all about himself, or, not saying that Bruce Wayne doesn't, but it's like he's got to be an entirely different person. He's got to be convincing about that. You know what I mean? Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, and even Robert Pattinson to a degree all nail that aspect flawlessly. That's a fact. That's why you get good movies when it comes to those Batman. Even Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton was a very great Bruce Wayne and a very great Batman. You just know the situation with how they suited the neck. You get the point. I mean his bad suit was fucked up. But anyways, um, when it comes to casting him, they shouldn't be focused on like who is Batman like. Who does Batman look like? It's no, who does who which one of these guys look like Batman? You know what I'm saying? Now, this is where I come in and say the internet has to relax because we have a range of fan castings of Alan Ritchson, which, if you don't know that by name, that is Jack Reacher in the new Reacher series on Amazon Prime. He is also Hawk on the Titans series with, and when I mean Titans, I mean Teen Titans, but this isn't the Teen Titans, this is the Titans. That means these are grown up Titans, these are grown up people on the Titans team. That's what they did. He was Hawk. And if you don't know who Hawk is, Hawk wasn't somebody that was a big staple in DC, but he was one of those characters on the Justice League um that was called the battle, like when it was all hands on deck. Him and his brother, because in the first iteration of Hawk and Dove, it was two brothers. Now in the new iteration, it's sometimes two lovers, which would be a man or a woman. And that man would be Hawk and the woman would be Dove. So, but with all that said, that's who they want. That's who some people want to be Batman. He's got the physique for it for sure. I feel like if they dye his hair, I mean, he might look like the part. But I'm not somebody who, especially in this day and age. A few years ago, I was, but now I'm kind of like, I don't really care as long as he acts like Batman and even looks like Batman. You know what I'm saying? But if you ask me, as cool as that would be to see, I don't think he's like, I don't think he's good for that part. That's just my opinion. I'm sure a lot of you would disagree on that, and you're free to feel that way. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is right and this is wrong. If you feel a certain type of way, please, let me know. You know what I'm saying? If you don't agree with me, that's fine. That's that's the beauty of fandom. That's the beauty of debates and conversations. You know what I mean? We're not all supposed to always agree with each other. But moving on, there's another fan cast that people make. It's very much out there. Like you got accounts with like this name, and you know what I mean, like accounts with this fan cast. It's that real. But Lee Pace as Batman. I don't know who that guy is personally. I haven't really done my research on him. I heard if I'm not thinking of him, it's Scott Adkins, the guy who jumped in the fat suit in John Wick 4. Um, they picked those two, and one of those two, I think Scott Adkins is an actual martial artist. He practices martial arts, and I think Lee Pace does like immense training or something like that. I could be wrong, I don't know, but yeah, they cast the fans are casting them too as Batman, and like I said, I'm not against it as long as they look and can be convincing. They look the part and they can be convincing. That's really what matters to me. I don't, at this point, I don't care about, star power or, the name behind the fucking shit, because it's clear that doesn't fucking work when it comes to Batman. You gotta do Batman right no matter what. It doesn't matter if you put Ben Affleck behind this shit. That much is clear. And I love Ben Affleck, but, you guys got to stick with the logic here. You know what I mean? It really matters about who can truly convince people that he is Batman. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the beauty of taking on that role. You know what I'm saying? I feel like even though Kevin Conroy only voiced the character for over 3 decades, he even understood that and nailed that flawlessly. 9.5 out of 10 just with his voice alone. It's amazing on how somebody can do that shit. And not for nothing, if you want a perfect fucking example, you already got it in Arkham Knight, as you're seeing right here. I'm sorry you can't hear the audio, but yo, you could just tell, you know what I'm saying, that he was definitely dedicated to this role just with his voice alone. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, there's people that are casting those two, Lee Pace and Scott Adkins, as Batman. More Lee Pace. When I say the people making accounts of these fan casts, I mean, You can look up. I guess I'm shouting this guy out too, where you can look up Lee Pace Batman, and there's a fucking account on Threads and Instagram and fucking Twitter with that name. Like it's fucking insane. And with me personally, I'm not taking it that far when it comes to the castings. I mean, not for nothing, but I blindly, what's the word for it? I blindly um I can't even think of it, but basically I called Nicholas Holt as Lex Luthor. I called it. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and ask the Truth 31. Shout out to Truth 31. Go ahead and check my boy out. He's got it on his own YouTube channel. He uploads news about DC every single fucking day. But yeah, he'll even tell you, I'm the one that called it, that Nicholas Holt was going to be Lex Luthor. And he even fucking he pulled that card. He was like, yo, God damn it, Bigelow, you fucking called it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not even trying to toot horns here, but it's like, yo, I just don't care. You know what I mean? As long as they can be convincing of that part, that's what matters to me. All right. I don't, I'm not really in it for the guy that's playing the character. I'm in it for the character itself. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why we like Robert Downey Jr. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's more than just, oh yeah, it's Robert Downey Jr. No, that's Iron Man. He convinced the world that he was Tony Stark. That, you know what I'm saying? It's not that, oh, and it's not that we hate the guy either. It's not that, but it's like, yo, if you try to recast somebody else, you know what I mean? That's why people feel some type of way when it comes to changing actors or whatever the case may be with some of these characters, because it may just not flow right. But the problem is there are people that can be convincing in these roles. You know what I'm saying? And I do believe, genuinely believe, there is somebody else out there who can take on that role of Tony Stark. Marvel Studios just don't want to go find him because they don't want to reboot. And it is what it is. I mean, I have my opinions on that, but we'll save that for another video. Back to the Batman casting. We'll move on from Scott Adkins and Lee Pace. And again, you want my opinions on that? Again, not the worst ones. If I had to choose, gun to my head, probably Scott Adkins. I mean, he's truly a martial artist fighter just for the fighting alone. I mean, if anything is going to sell me, it'll be his Batman fights. So yeah, moving on from that. Uh what's the guy's name? 1923, Brandon Sklenar. So yeah, that one's floating around right now. Brandon Sklenar. He's in the Yellowstone origin story, 1923. And if you don't know what Yellowstone is, it's essentially like a cowboy type of show. I haven't really watched it myself, so I'm not gonna really, say with confidence of what it is, because I'd be speaking out of ignorance. But from what I can tell, it's like it's basically like a dramatic western that's based with cowboys and farmers on the ranch. You know what I mean? So and Brandon Sklenar is in a spinoff of the Yellowstone show, which is called 1923. I'm not sure what his role is in there. I just know that he's definitely in that show, and he has a significant part in there. Um, a lot of people on the internet or the fan community think that he fits the look, and I mean, okay, but he's gotta really commit to that. You know what I mean? Like, he's gotta really make a full on change from what he looks like now to like tried and true playboy that's got that clean shaven face, you know what I mean, that slicked back hair with the nice suit, you know what I mean, when he's Bruce Wayne. And then, like, he's Batman when he's the knight, he puts on that suit, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a completely different story when it comes to Batman, you know what I'm saying? But as long as he just looks that part, he plays that part, commits to that part, I'm all for it. But my thing is, I'm just not going to be, it's just the same thing I feel about the other three. I'm not somebody who has a dead set pick on who should play Batman. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of just stopped because for a while I thought Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck were very good iterations of Batman. Or Batman. Wow, like both of them were Batman. Like, they were very good iterations of Batman and Superman. All they really needed was just good scripts. They didn't really get that. We're about to get new ones. So my thing is, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, it should be this guy, it should be this guy. You know what I mean? Like, within the Truth Army, or like, any one of my friends, like, I'll be like, yeah, I think this guy looks like the part. I think, he should get it, which is what we discussed when it came to David Cornsweat's Superman and Wolfgang Novogratz. You know what I'm saying? Like, I did feel like David looked more like the part for Superman, but not for nothing, both of them look like Clark Kent. So, It just depends on who is actually, more convincing. That's my thing. And I'm not going to say David was more convincing because I didn't see an audition for Wolfgang. But until we do, I'm a reserve on that. But I mean, from what I seen in the trailers, he looks like Superman. He acts like Superman. I mean, I'm not really going to complain. If anything is different in the movie, I will definitely be the first to let you know. But as for Batman, I'm not going to, you know, I just want somebody who knows the character, has he doesn't have to read every single Batman comic. He doesn't even have to start from the beginning. I mean, he at least has to know about, Tech Comics number 27. The year, you know what I'm saying? Like just some common knowledge. Like you just can't put somebody who knows not one fucking thing about nothing. You know what I mean? Like you got to give him something. Like if that guy doesn't even at least mention Batman Year One, there's a problem. You know what I mean? Like because of the simple fact that this is source material. You can't just ignore source material. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sitting here and saying, oh, he's got a piece of the comic book fans, but it's like, yo, you want everybody on your side. You truly want everybody on your side. All right, do what you got to do. Build the character for the general audience, but make sure that this character is also tipping his hat to the fans. You know what I'm saying? In one way or another, whether it be behind the scenes with the actor, out in public. You know what I'm saying? Like a fan asked him a question about comics. He pulls up, oh yeah, nah, Batman Year One, or Batman Nightfall. You know what I'm saying? Like he's pulling out some bangers. He's pulling out some actual, Batman canon shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, I'm not saying he has to know every single thing about DC canon or Batman, everything Batman related. I'm not saying he has to. I'm just saying he has to at least acknowledge it and respect that that's what that is. You know what I'm saying? That's really all that matters. David Cornsweet does it. That's why I don't fucking hate him. That's why I would like to see more. That part of the reason why I would like to see more of his Superman, because he is not only there for the general audience, but he's tipping his hat to the fans, saying, "Hey, yo, I know you guys are coming to see me, and I know you guys are wondering, you know what I mean? Here, you know what I'm saying? Like, and this is the guy that'll be the type to tell you to, you know, like when the Superman movie came out, the Christopher Reeve story, he told people, told kids, everybody, go watch this movie first before you go watch Superman, and he's not wrong. You do have, I feel like you should be watching that shit before you go watch the actual Superman movie, because by all rights and measurements, for a generation, like an entire generation, and even beyond that, Christopher Reeve was Superman, or Christopher Reeve was Superman. So, you know, that's definitely something to think about. I don't think there's really anybody else in terms of casting Batman. Oh yeah, talk about this real quick because this is a big one, really, really big one. Robert Pattinson joined the DCU. So instead of just casting a new Batman, the Batman fans instead just saying, "Hey, bring him into the DCU. He's already here. You got him. I mean, what's the problem?" And I'm just going to tell you problem number one. The tone is not there. That's first and foremost. Second of all, that universe is nothing like what DC is supposed to be. Not even just DC, but Batman's world in DC. Riddler, for one. Hey, I like Riddler in that movie. I do. But comparing him to his comic book counterpart, he's not better, and it's not the go-to when it comes to the character of Riddler. I'm not saying sink the ship because of that alone, but I'm saying there are so many things different like that for one, and Selena Kyle with her, what's going on with her as well. You know what I'm saying? All of that is completely different than what the actual, comics in the DC universe is. You know what I mean? And you can't just take something so different like that and try to integrate something that is trying to be almost a one for, not a one for one, but like very similar to, it's source material. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying the Batman isn't doing that, but the Batman took its creatives in a different direction. You know what I'm saying? And trying to bring that into the DCU, which isn't doing that, is not really the best way to do it. You know what I mean? It's not feasible if you ask me. It just doesn't make sense. And not for nothing, but all that happened in Gotham. Nobody's talking about nobody's talking about that outside of that. You know what I mean? And then you got the Penguin. All that's happening in there. You get no mention of anything. This is Batman after year two, and also in the new Batman movie that's coming out, we're supposed to get what you call it, Robin. So how does a 20-something-year-old Batman have a kid already? You can't really have it two ways. So I mean, I think that's really going to do it in terms of this video. It's enough rambling about Batman as it is. Overall, I just want somebody who, looks at this character and is like, and actually dedicates themselves you know, to being that character. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just put on this cape and cowl and think you're another superhero. No, you're Batman. You're the total antithesis, and you're the total opposite of the Godfather of superheroes. You're supposed to be somebody that's, you know what I mean? And that's really about it. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Any support is appreciated. And I mean, shit, you already know what the deal is. I'm gonna see you on the Gotham rooftop, baby.